What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another Tottenham update for you guys today, and quite a lot to get through. Fabrizio Romano has been doing the rounds on the Spurs transfers, incomings and outgoings. Let's start off with James Maddison. We heard yesterday that a bid had gone in for Harvey Barnes and James Maddison for 50 million, which seemed a bit wide off the mark, as Romano says that Tottenham are working on both Maddison and Harvey Barnes deals. Tottenham have not sent any official proposals for Harvey Barnes, and James Maddison it just would make sense to it wouldn't make sense to submit a joint bid of 50 million for both of these players. No chance. And that's what we were saying yesterday.
Wouldn't stop Levy before, though.
Yeah, true. He goes on to say that James Maddison remains one of Tottenham's main transfer targets. Spurs have a very good relationship with Maddison's agent, which is the same agent as Ange Postecoglou, which could help the negotiations with Tottenham. Ali Gold says that Tottenham hold a strong interest in Maddison and Barnes, although club sources have insisted that talks of a bid is premature. Matt Law says that Tottenham are interested in both Maddison and Harvey Barnes, and they could be open to allowing Harry Winks to join Leicester in part of the deal.
Kane's going to do a triumphant return to Leicester in the Championship.
Yeah. Harry Winks.
Oh, thank God. No, I think... how much would that even knock off the price, Harry Winks?
Probably about 10 million.
It would. 10 million now. I'd love a 10 million knock off on the price. That'd be good. Look, in terms of this double deal, I'm in favour of it. I think it'll be. I think Leicester kind of got relegated in spite of their good form, rather than. I don't think they contributed too much to the fact that they went down. Themselves actually had
those two were the shining lights in the team.
They had two individually good seasons. Barnes got 13 goals last season. Maddison 10 goals and 9 assists. I both think that. I think that both those players do have a place in this team as well. Potentially, especially Maddison. I think Harvey Barnes is a really good option off the left wing. As much as, I guess, look, it depends on the price. I mean, what kind of price do you reckon that it would? We could do a double deal for that?
I reckon minimum prices that we can sign Harvey Barnes and Maddison. I reckon minimum for Maddison around 40-45 million. Minimum for Harvey Barnes, I would say probably about 10 million less than that, 30 to 35 million.
Yes, you're probably looking at 75-80 million double deal at this point. So it's a big outlay. And maybe if you include Harry Winks in there, so maybe if you can put Harry Winks in there, maybe 70 million plus Winks.
I think that would be a great deal for us. 70 million plus
two homegrown players as well.
Because you've got to think about, like, we're going to be signing players anyway, and they're going to be around that ballpark figure for the quality that we need to bring in. It just makes it seem a lot bigger because it's two players from one club, and it's obviously a bigger figure.
Yeah, two English players. So I think this would be really positive for Tottenham. And I'd really like, obviously, I'm a massive fan of James Maddison. I've said it before. I think Harvey Barnes, is he perfect for what we need? You could argue not, but maybe Ange can develop him to become more of a winger that he needs. He is a very quick winger. I question his dribbling ability. I don't think it's that strong, but his finishing ability is really good. And maybe he can develop his game at Spurs with surrounded by better players. So I'm excited about the prospect of him as well.
And you're thinking about Maddison and Barnes as well. It's like if they come in for those prices, I think Maddison already, his value will go up as soon as we sign him. And I think Barnes as well, if he can have a good season under Ange as well, that value could actually go up massively. So it could be two very clever signings, to be honest.
It would definitely be an exciting double deal, albeit in terms of their ages, it's not like maybe on the younger side, Maddison's 27, Barnes is 25, I think. So
they're good ages, though.
It's good ages for their prime, but in terms of a rebuild, if you're looking for much younger players to grow, I guess it doesn't represent that, but I guess it doesn't need to be that.
Yeah. But I think it'll be two clever signings for Tottenham if we can get them over the line. And all the stuff with Maddison and Newcastle seems to be going very quiet at the moment.
Yeah, I've got a feeling that I think Newcastle really want him, but I just have the feeling that Maddison would rather come to Spurs. I don't know. I just get that feeling.
Yeah, I was listening to Talk Sport on the way in today, and they were saying Spurs are the front runners now for Maddison and stuff like that. So all the reports coming out seem to favour Spurs over Newcastle at the moment.
I feel like if he really wanted Newcastle, I feel like it would have been done already.
Yeah, potentially. But we'll see how it plays out. We've got a long weekend of transfer speculation, but let's move on and let's talk about Clement Lenglet now. We got an official announcement from Spurs yesterday evening saying that Tottenham confirmed the departures of Danjuma and Clement Lenglet following the conclusion of their loan spells. However, Fabrizio Romano says that Tottenham will discuss with Barcelona in the next days for Clement Lenglet. And Tony Juan Marti says that Tottenham and Barcelona will meet in the next few days to discuss Lenglet. Barca want 10 to 12 million euros. Spurs and Lenglet are keen to continue together.
Yeah, I mean, so the conclusion of the loan deal announcement is just basically us saying we're not going to be signing him for the option to buy, which I believe was 12 million euros.
No, actually, Fabrizio Romano said that there was no option in the deal.
There was no option for Lenglet?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's I think that was different to what was reported earlier on.
So that's why it was reported that there was that their loan spell was ended, because there was no option on either of these players apparently.
I wouldn't pay 12 million for him. I just wouldn't. I mean, I don't understand why we would bring him in permanently for a fee like that. I mean, even a cheap fee, my position is I don't want him to sign permanently. I think we should be going either for a younger player, or if we're going to keep a defender around, you might as well not spend the money on Lenglet and just keep... If you're going to have an average defender, you might as well keep the ones that we have rather than bring in another one, in my opinion. But he is better on the ball than a lot of the defenders that we have currently, and if Postecoglou really believes that he could be part of his team, then I guess we have to go with it. But I don't know, I wasn't convinced with Lenglet.
Maybe the thinking is what you're saying, that we should keep the average defenders that we have at the club now as opposed to keeping Lenglet. Maybe it's the thinking that Lenglet is more comfortable in a back four, as Davis isn't really comfortable in a back four, Dier is not really comfortable in a back four, so maybe Lenglet out of all of them is the most comfortable, and if you can get him in on a cheap deal and ship the others out, then maybe it's just good cover.
Yeah, I guess we have to go with it. If that's the case, we'll have to see. I honestly wouldn't pay 10 million. I'd pay if you're not getting it for a really, really cheap deal, I don't see the point in it, in my opinion. I wouldn't pay 10 million euros for him. You'd have to make sure that Barca are really desperate to get him off the books, pay 6 million euros or something.
And if you don't want to pay 10 million for him, then there's probably no point bringing him in at all.
Yeah, I agree.
But look, I can kind of understand it as cover, just because we need to focus on big targets, a big central defender to come in as well, and a goalkeeper obviously, and an attacking midfielder, the lads from Leicester. I think we need to spend a massive outlay on them. So if we can't spend that much on a backup centre back, I mean, I think Lenglet solely as a backup could work, especially as there's no Europe this season, so he might not have to play that much.
So spending 10 million for a player who won't have to play.
Pretty much.
Yeah, fair enough. So whatever.
Just cover. I mean, we need cover, don't we?
Yeah, we need cover, I guess.
Next up, Arnaut Danjuma. Romano says that Danjuma was not part of Tottenham's plans, and he's attracting bids from different areas. So Danjuma will not be coming back for Spurs.
Yeah, it makes sense. He barely got a look in when he was here. Why would he want to stay as well, given the lack of chances he got? I think he's a good player, but I don't know. I mean, I also think Postecoglou probably could have worked with him, but unfortunately, I think from his point of view, why would he want to stay? I feel like Danjuma is a better attacker than Lenglet as a defender. Yeah, for sure. And if it was between those two, if you asked me if I could only pick one of those two to keep in the squad, I would 100% say Danjuma. I actually saw quite a bit of quality from the little time that he did have on the pitch. Yeah, he was... And we know from his time at Villarreal he's a talented winger as well. Unfortunately, we just never gave him a chance. So, I mean, it's hard to justify an outlay based on that, and it's hard for him to justify staying based on that as well. Yeah. Let's talk about Conor Gallagher now. Romano says that there are no direct conversations between Tottenham and Chelsea yet for Conor Gallagher. Let's see what happens in the next days or maybe hours. Ange Postecoglou appreciates this type of player, and we will see if Gallagher is the right opportunity for Tottenham Hotspur. Seems like a fire sale at Chelsea at the moment. Havertz set to leave as well. Yeah, I was reading, apparently they need to offload quite a lot of players before the end of June or something like that. Maybe for FFP reasons. Yeah, something like that. A bit like Everton had to let go of Richarlison before June to balance the books. It makes sense. They spent so much money. Yeah. There has to be some sort of other way. There has to be another way for it. So, I think, look, Conor Gallagher's a good player. It depends on the price. I think the price banded about is 40 million. I don't know if I'd pay that much. But if it's true that they do need to offload players before June, the end of June, that doesn't give them a lot of time. They've got 2 weeks, less than 2 weeks to go. Maybe you can get fairly good, decent price for these players in the last days of June. I would take Conor Gallagher for a decent price, but I would take him for like 25 million potentially.
I think that'd be a great deal.
I wouldn't pay more than that, I don't think.
I would pay maybe up to 30 million, something like that. But anything more than that, it gets a bit excessive, to be honest. But I do believe in Conor Gallagher's ability. I think he showed a lot at Crystal Palace. He was one of their best players in that season under Patrick Vieira. It just hasn't worked for him at Chelsea, but it hasn't worked for anyone at Chelsea this season. So I wouldn't, like, when you're judging a player, look at this season at Chelsea to judge him by. I would more judge him at that year at Crystal Palace.
I would even say he's been one of Chelsea's better players, even in their poor season. So even though they've been terrible, he's been one of the players who consistently put in above average performances, I would say. But I know a lot of Chelsea fans don't like him. I just think he's a good young English player, and I think actually as one of the number 8s, he'll be a good player for those roles.
Next up, let's talk about Pau Torres. That name coming up once again. Fabrizio Romano says that Tottenham appreciate Pau Torres, but Aston Villa are really pushing for him. What do you think about Pau Torres? I mean, we've spoken about him so many times over the years, but his name seems to have diminished a little bit in terms of how good he is in stature of the game.
I guess. I mean, his stock was really high a couple of years ago. I know I think he doesn't start anymore for Spain, although he was starting at the Euros. I think at the World Cup he wasn't. Villarreal got to the Champions League semi-final, and then last season didn't do as well. So maybe his stock has fallen a bit. I still think, actually, in terms of the player he is, I think he would be good for how we want to play, and I think Postecoglou can work with him a lot.
He's a bit slow, though, isn't he?
He's a bit slow, but I think he can make up for it in other ways. That's why I'm not saying he's perfect. I'm saying he's good for how we want to play. I think on the ball he would be a real asset to how we want to play.
Do you not think he's just like a bit of a better version than Clement Lenglet?
He's like a bit better than Lenglet and a bit worse than Laporte, essentially.
I think quite a bit worse than Laporte and just a bit better than Lenglet, maybe.
No, I think a lot better than Lenglet.
You reckon?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's a lot better than Lenglet. I think between him and Laporte...
but Spurs fans, some Spurs fans, including you, myself, are quite excited for Lenglet coming in, you know?
I wasn't that excited. I was willing to give it a go because we knew it was a short-term deal. Maybe he could surprise us. I think we all got... Lenglet, we got the defender we thought we were getting, to be honest. It wasn't a massive surprise that he was pretty underwhelming.
But like the Lenglet of his first 2 years at Barcelona when he was performing really well, I mean, how do you compare that to maybe a Pau Torres of a year ago?
Yeah, that's a fairly similar level, you'd probably argue. But that's a long time ago now. That's like 6 years ago. So, I mean, that's not the defender that we're getting now. It's been a long time since Lenglet was on form. Pau Torres maybe hasn't been on the best form last season, but at least in the recent past, he's been a really good defender. You know, one that got to a Champions League semi-final with Villarreal 2 years ago. So, I mean, I really like him. Again, if it's going to be a big outlay, I'd rather go for someone with a bit more pace. But if you can maybe get a good deal for him, I mean, it's not. I mean, but then again, when it looks like we're going to be in a battle with Villa, and Villa have quite a bit of money as well. So I don't see them, if they're really desperate for him, balking at a significant fee.
I think if there's a race between us and Villa, I do back us to have more of a pool than Aston Villa, even though they're in the Conference League.
But
I get that. But I mean, when you're looking at Pau Torres, right, you've seen top clubs being linked with him so many times over the past years. You've seen, I think, the likes of Chelsea, Man United, Arsenal, Spurs. Does it say much about him if he ends up at Aston Villa opposed to any of those clubs?
Not necessarily, but I mean, it seems as though no one's totally convinced by him, which is true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's right. You know, because Man United wanted him, but then they ended up with like Martinez and Varane. They just move on, but just because they've moved on doesn't mean he's a worse player.
I mean, if we're going to sign a player for starting on the left side of the defence, I want to get someone of a higher stature and a better player and a more quicker player than Pau Torres. I don't think he would be number one on my list, to be honest.
He wouldn't be number one on my list, but I think we could do a lot worse.
We could do a lot better as well, though.
I mean, not that much better.
No?
Not particularly. I mean, he's quite a good defender.
I think going for someone that we've been linked with in the Premier League, like a Guehi, have a more of a ceiling to grow. They've got Premier League experience. You never know how Pau Torres is going to take to the Premier League as well. I mean, I'd just prefer to go for other targets, to be honest.
That's fair enough. I mean, I wouldn't be mad at Pau Torres. I think he's a good defender. I would rather go for someone with a bit more pace, but I think he's good. I like Pau Torres.
All right. Well, let us know in the comment section below your thoughts on Pau Torres. Let's talk about Dejan Kulusevski now, as Fabrizio Romano says that negotiations between Tottenham and Juventus for Dejan Kulusevski are taking place and advancing very well. There's a confidence that the deal will get done for a fee close to 30 million euros. Damasio says that there have been positive talks between Tottenham and Juventus for Dejan Kulusevski in the past few hours, and there is now a confidence he will stay in England as agreement could be reached for around 30 million euros. So it looks as though this one is going to happen at long last.
Yeah, shaved 5 million euros off the price, all that haggling, so fair play to Levy. He's done the job. Looks like he's going to get the price. Well, it looks like he's going to do the job if he can get the price down a bit. I mean, it's negligible money. He did put the deal at risk for the sake of 5 million euros, but he'll argue it's 5 million euros that he can spend on other targets now. So fair play. I'm just happy that this one looks like it's going to get done.
Yeah. Let's talk about Davinson Sanchez now. Fabrizio Romano says that Sanchez has decided to leave Tottenham Hotspur this summer. Discussions will take place to find a new club. And Pipe Sierra says that Davinson has decided to leave Tottenham and Spurs want to sell him. The defender has interest from other Premier League clubs and he wants a move to a new league.
Interest in other Premier League clubs?
Yeah, but apparently he doesn't want to stay in the Premier League. But I think this one is the one that we've been waiting for so long, because we've been trying to shift him for so many years now and he's just not wanted to leave the club. So it's finally music to our ears that he's finally ready and wants to leave Tottenham.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time coming. We know for a long time he just hasn't been good enough. He's just so clumsy on the ball and he's never improved. Yes, you could argue confidence issues has affected him and all these different things and having all these different managers, but at the end of the day, he's just never been good enough. He's been a flop for 42 million. That's the reality, and I think he's been needing moving on for a long time, and we need a new player in that position. So hopefully we can get any. I think at this point, take what you can get. I mean, I really hope they don't hold out for 15 million or something. Just take whatever you can get, because we need to move him on.
Yeah,
need to free up that space.
Just take what you can.
It's not even about
10 million,
money.
5 million, just get him out the door.
It's not
get
about getting money,
books.
it's about freeing up that space for a new centre-back. That's the most important thing.
Absolutely. Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg, CF Bayern, Christian Falk is saying that Pierre-Emile Hojbjerg is on Bayern Munich's list of midfield targets, and they have made contact with the Tottenham player's agent, Pini Zahavi. So Hojbjerg back to Bayern. What do you think about that?
That would be an interesting deal. I mean, they've got the likes of Goretzka, they've got the likes of Kimmich, they've got Gravenbach right now, who's not getting a look and he's not happy with his game time. So I would be quite surprised.
There's talk of Kimmich going, no?
There's talk, but I think he is going to stay. I'd be very surprised if Hojbjerg is seriously on their radar, especially as a player to start. I'd assume if he moves there, he's going to be a squad player. Obviously, he had a decent time at Bayern as a squad player a number of years ago, but I don't know if he would want to go full circle and go back around, and maybe he'd want that move and back himself to become a starter there. Maybe he'd have that confidence in himself. I'm sure he would want it, to be fair. I mean, when Bayern comes around and he was there as a young player, maybe he'd feel like it's like a homecoming of sorts. I'll just be very surprised if Bayern are really serious about that.
Yeah, I mean, it surprised me when I saw it. But what's your opinion? I mean, we've spoken a lot about Hojbjerg, and I have said in the past that I think he should be one that we should be looking to move on. But then I was thinking about it more, and yesterday I mentioned it on the panel. I was saying, do you think this could be one that we regret selling a year down the line or a couple of years down the line?
Depends who we replace him with. I do think at the end of the day, he is a limited player. That's the truth. He's not going to get too much better than how he is. But what he is a good player. He's as I described, he's quite a functional player. He can be good at passing. He's quite good off the ball defensively. He makes a lot of interceptions and stuff. And now we're moving to a midfield three. I think that would really help with his workload, where he's had to be overworked. Under Conte previously and maybe under Mourinho as well. So maybe we could see a bit of a better Hojbjerg under Postecoglou, because I do think his passing game is underrated. I know he's known for his lax passing and sometimes it's inaccurate, but I actually generally think he makes a lot of progressive passes, an underrated amount. People don't give him credit for the amount of passing forward he does do. His goal contributions have upped. I do think he's a good player, but for me that's all he is. He's just a good player, and if you got money for him, you could potentially invest in a player who could be exceptional rather than just good, and maybe that's the direction we want to go in. But there is a possibility that we sell him and we replace him with a player who maybe isn't quite as good, and all of a sudden you're thinking we let go of a good player in the search for something better, and we didn't quite get that. But I think it depends on the money. If we're getting 30 million, I would sell. I would, because I do think for 30 million you can get a player who could potentially be better than him. Maybe not better than him now, but could potentially have the capacity to be better than him. But I think as well, you got to know what you have, and I think a lot of people think we have a rubbish player in Hojbjerg, and I just don't believe that. I think he is a good player. I think he would work under Postecoglou. I wouldn't be desperate to sell him. Essentially, if we're not getting the price, I would happily keep him, and I'll maybe even offer him a new contract if he's doing well.
But you got to remember as well, it's not just about the quality of player that we need to think about. Like with the likes of Lloris leaving, potentially Eric Dier leaving, Harry Kane with 1 year left in his deal. I mean, there's not many leaders left on that team, in that squad. And Hojbjerg is one that obviously stands out in that sense. So if we were to get rid of Hojbjerg, Dier and Lloris in the same window, with Kane running down his contract to his last year, that leaves a massive leadership void, especially with players that have been at Spurs for a while. So, I mean, that is something to say, and that is something that we're going to miss out dramatically.
100%, but if that happens, then you'd have to hope other players step up. And that's
who can you imagine stepping up though in a leadership capacity at Spurs? I can't really imagine any of them really doing it.
You have to think about. I mean, yeah, it's difficult to think about who has leadership, who you believe has leadership qualities currently in our team.
Maybe a Bentancur. I can see having a bit of leadership quality about him. I can't really think of anyone else, to be honest.
Sonny maybe. Then you got maybe Romero. I mean, it's difficult.
I don't even think Romero has that sort of leadership quality about him.
But you can develop.
And he's a young defender, but we need leaders like now. We need leaders to come in and really guide these young players through games and seasons. So I don't know. I think like we need to.
Well, not necessarily. We just need. If we are committed to a complete refresh. It's not necessarily like then we hope players grow into those roles rather than signing players ready-made now.
Like when we just started coming up under Pochettino, right, after when we first started making Champions League under him, we kind of had leaders all over the pitch. We had Vertonghen at the back. We had Lloris, who was the captain in goal. We had Toby Alderweireld as well. We had like a Moussa Dembele in the middle of the park. Maybe you can argue he wasn't such a leader of a player, but I thought he was. And then you had Harry Kane up top as well. So, I mean, you did have a kind of spine of players that could maybe guide players around them. Now we just don't have that.
Yeah, like Toby Alderweireld was a new signing. You can sign them players, and players can develop into those roles, and that's what you got to hope for. I wouldn't keep him around just because he's a leader, but I would keep him around because I do think he's a good player. I honestly think I'm happy for him to be part of the squad next season, and I think leadership is an important aspect. You can't be discounted. But if we got a good offer for him, I wouldn't reject it on the basis that he's one of the leaders, because you've got to hope that the players that you have, some of the players can develop into that.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk about Giovanni Lo Celso. Mundo Deportivo are claiming that Xavi really likes Giovanni Lo Celso, and the midfielder is on Barcelona's list of targets.
Classic Spurs. Like we have a player that we can't make work, and all of a sudden he's going to go to Barcelona. I mean, I'd be very surprised.
Like Paulinho.
Yeah, and he didn't really work out at Barca, did he? But I'd be very surprised if Lo Celso is actually on Barca's radar, considering that. I mean, he's so injury prone. Maybe they're thinking he could be a cheap deal. Maybe he can be a rotation option in their midfield.
I think he would work well there.
I could see it potentially working at Barcelona, but. I mean, imagine we're selling to Barcelona. It'd be just unbelievable for him. Like, how is he managing to get such a move when his last few years haven't been particularly amazing for him? You would feel like you have to really earn those kind of moves. But look, his form for Argentina is pretty good. For Villarreal, he was pretty decent. Not amazing, but he was pretty decent when he did play if he wasn't injured. So maybe they've seen that and think, look, we can work with this. But I'd be amazed if they seriously want to actually stump up the cash for him.
What is the cash
10,
for
15
him?
million?
Yeah, I mean, we all know about Barca's financial problems, so I just can't really see them doing a massive outlay on anyone, but I can see 10, 15 million. But will Lo Celso be the one that they want to spend that 10, 15 million on? I don't know. We'll have to see how it plays out. Last but not least, let's talk about Eric Dier. Fabrizio Romano says that there were preliminary discussions with Eric Dier over a new contract a few months ago, but now it is something not advanced, and there is a chance for Eric Dier to leave Tottenham this summer. So, like, if we're going to sell Dier and Sanchez, who does that leave us with? That leaves us with Romero. Who else?
Leaves us Romero. Tanganga's still there. Davis is a left centre back.
Davis and a left centre back and a back four. I just can't see that working.
So not many. We have to be serious about recruiting centre backs.
So that's what I'm saying about the Lenglet thing before. Like, if we are going to sell Dier and Sanchez, isn't it worth bringing in a cheap option in Lenglet and then a more expensive option to be the starter?
Potentially. I mean, I'd rather just sign a younger player. I'd rather, if we're going to buy someone cheap, I'd rather find a cheap younger option who has potential to grow rather than a Lenglet. But if they're not available, then I guess it is not a bad shout. I want us to focus on not just centre-backs for now, but centre-backs for the future. Some centre-backs who can grow. And even if it means we spend 20 million on Bella Kotchap rather than 5 million on Lenglet, then do that. I think that's a better use of your money rather than spending money and wages on Lenglet, and then in a year's time you're probably going to have to sell him. So for me, that's a better investment and better use of the money.
Yeah, that's fair enough. But that is your Tottenham update for today. Let me know in the comment section below if you have any thoughts regarding any of the news stories we brought to you today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.